Here's to Fathom is an amazing game. I remember watching Jacksepticeye play through the first episode 2 freaking years ago. After that, I played every episode for myself and watched like every streamer and YouTuber on the planet play it. I've always wanted to talk about it ever since it released, but I told myself that I wanted to wait until all episodes come out. And now that episode 5, Woodbury Getaway, released a few days ago, I played it like 3 times by now. I think it's time to actually talk about it. There's something about the vibe or the atmosphere, but the way you see the person who is attacking you, approaching you, that always makes me fucking panic so much. I'll mention every moment when we cross those bridges, but before we start the ranking, I very much recommend to play it or at least watch a YouTube Let's Play, because I'm not gonna explain anything, I'm just gonna assume you know that what happens. So, without further ado, let's rank the Feared Fathom episodes. I know most people would agree with me in saying that the second episode is probably the worst. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just more lackluster in my opinion. I don't know, it just never really grabbed me like every other episode in the whole game. Honestly, your car breaking down and having to be picked up by the guy from the gas station was honestly the best part, which is very disappointing because in the very first half of the episode, and being drugged near the end was more annoying than it was scary, but honestly unrealistic if you ask me. And I don't know what it is, but I don't like the energy of the episode whatsoever. And if you go online, I think most people would agree with me on this. On Reddit, most people would put it on their bottom of their tier list, and the videos get only like half the views of the first episode. And in general, it gets really overlooked compared to everything else. I think what makes this episode so good are the things that make the other episodes so good in the first place. It doesn't really stand out on its own 2 feet. It's a good standalone experience, but very mediocre compared to the whole game. I was debating whether or not I should put this on 3 or 4, but I decided 4 at the very last second. Now, the episode is very fresh, so my opinion can change very soon, but this episode does have a lot of stuff I would change. First thing is that I really like the feeling of being alone, even though this is probably the episode where you talk to the most people. You always contemplate on who to trust and who not to. You first think, oh, that hiker will probably come back. Then Rick acts very weird. Then you see the hiker guy again. Then Mike is acting like a creep. After that, hiker guy comes back. After that, Rick turns out to be the villain. Not to mention, at some point I was suspicious of Nora for acting very weird with saying she was on a budget, then not showing up for the whole day. You know what I mean? You're suspicious of literally anyone, and that makes the game terrifying. A lot of people say that it's too long, but I think if you just change up some things, it would feel better. The part where the board games feels annoying. It's boring as hell. The fishing segment feels kinda long as well, especially if you find the whole minigame hard or annoying. And the RNG doesn't help either. But I did like the hide and seek part, and that might be just me, to be honest. The whole game in general has the problem with encounters and what triggers time to hide, but I feel like this episode has it the most. Like, when the hiker guy showed up, I thought I should hide, but then he just wanted to go back to bed. And the moment I saw the text from Real Rick, I booked it and hid before I realized that I should needed to confront him and then hide. In general, the whole premise of going to a house for a getaway is an idea I hate. I never like doing it in real life, so in a horror game, it makes me even more terrified. But when you start to run and get call from Nora, I felt like it was very cheap, man. Like, you have to run, and hide again. And I feel like they did it to make the game longer. In episode 4, I feel like it made sense, but in episode 5 was cheap in my opinion. Like you're telling me she called the moment you started running. How convenient. And there's like 4 separate instances of Jeep jump scares. That is probably the worst thing in the whole episode. But I love hearing Queso and Lily Petrie especially, since she's like one of my favorite YouTubers. Also, stop hating on my boy Mike. I know he's weird, but he just wants to get the girl, man. He's just an awkward guy. Plus, he saved us at the end. I know Home Alone is very short, but it's so effective with its 20-minute runtime. It's the first episode in the whole game, and it's amazing. I love that you can see the intruder on multiple occasions throughout the episode, and the fact that your character doesn't know he's in the house, but you know, makes the stakes go way up high. This is where the game's realism really helps, because in episode 2, I can't really believe you got drugged, but I can definitely believe this happened to somebody. And the amount of times the game messes with your subconscious. Like when you see the picture the mom sends you, and if you've seen the intruder go up the stairs previously, you would think he's already in the house. And if you try to book it to the neighbor, he catches you.
Wait, where can I leave?
Jesus fucking Christ! And then later you try to leave because you hear your neighbor calling for you. He catches you if you try to go to the door. The idea of a house intruder horror game is terrifying because it's relatable. The game does so much with its 20-minute runtime, and it doesn't need more. Carson House is probably one of the only times a horror game made my heart drop, aside from the #1 spot. But we'll get to it in a bit. This is basically Home Alone but better. I don't have much to say. It features everything I liked about the first episode, but in a more detailed way. I could basically hear my heartbeat when I saw the crazy X on the camera approaching the door. And the game using your mic was so good this time around, because of some reason it didn't feel like a gimmick, unlike in episode 2, but it felt really tense. I don't know why. It just gave me the vibe, I guess. And I don't know why, but the X's motto freaks me the fuck out. And that goddamn smile. Still, the idea of someone intruding your house is still scarier than someone drugging you and breaking into your motel room. This is definitely one of the best episodes in the game. This episode is the most scared I've ever been while playing a horror game. The amount of adrenaline I got seeing the cult running to the tower is so thick that you can cut it with a knife, man. I love that it took place over multiple days and not just like a single night. It's so detailed, but not overly detailed. You can go to the computer, but there's so many things you can do on it that aren't actually needed. You can completely skip over the shitty training video voiced by Jacksepticeye.
First to say, congratulations!
This premise is pretty insane, but still grounded in reality. And the fact that as a player, you're always on edge, being in the middle of the forest in a horror game, makes it terrifying. You feel so alone, and arguably, when a person is with you, it's even more terrifying. And I love the little details that slowly build up into actually seeing the cult. First, Billy teases it by saying he thought you were one of them. Then you see him in the background. After that, a hacker gets killed by them. And after that, they fuck with you by leaving this in front of your goddamn doorstep. And fuck this piece of shit, by the way. I will say it again, my adrenaline was through the roof the moment I saw the cult running to the tower, and running to that RV was probably the scariest thing I've ever experienced, both in games and real life. My life is very boring, I'd say. So yeah, that's the video. It was really short, but I hope you liked it. I really wanted to talk about this game because it's probably one of my favorite horror games ever, and it's so effective. So yeah, I hope you didn't want to kill me for my rankings. With that said, believe in yourself, never give up, and goodbye.